Canute the Great was a Viking ruler who by the early 11th century ruled over a North Sea empire encompassing Denmark, England, Norway, and parts of Sweden. His reign is noted for unifying England and Denmark together, establishing a stable and effective administration, and promoting Christianity alongside Norse traditions. He also fostered economic prosperity through trade and enacted legal reforms to ensure justice across his domain. If you've come to learn about Canute, then you're in the right place. Hello and welcome to the channel. For those returning, it's good to see you again. And for those who are here on the first time, it's good to meet you. If you'd like to support the channel, links to the Patreon are in the description. Otherwise, if you want to help YouTube show my video to more people, a like and subscribe, and perhaps leave your comments down below always helps. Now, let's get on to the video for today. I'll invite you to get yourself relaxed. It's going to be a long one. Canute's lineage traces back to the Danish royal family, with his father being Sweyn Forkbeard, who himself was the son and heir to King Harald Bluetooth, a key figure in Denmark's unification. The exact details of Canute's birth, including the time and the place, are something that we unfortunately don't have solid details about. Now, Sweyn Forkbeard's ancestry can be traced through Harthacnut I, the semi-legendary founder of the Danish royal house, and his son Gorm the Old, who marked the beginning of the official royal line. Now, Canute's grandfather, Harald Bluetooth, was instrumental in the Christianization of Denmark, marking him as one of the earliest Scandinavian monarchs to embrace Christianity. And what about Canute's mother? Well, unfortunately, we don't have much information about that. But the Chronicon of Tiamtar of Merseburg and the Ecomium Emae identify her as Swietoslawa, daughter of Mieszko I of Poland, and being that Polish is the dark souls of languages, sorry if I pronounce the names incorrectly. Now, Norse sources, such as Heimskringla by Snorri Sturluson, also suggest a Polish princess, known as Gunhild, daughter of Burislav, the king of Vinland, as Canute's mother. Adam of Bremen, however, uniquely equates Canute's mother with the former Queen of Sweden, wife of Eric the Victorious, and mother of Olaf Skotkonung. The complexity is further compounded by conflicting narratives regarding Sweyn's marriages, including the purported union with Eric's widow, Sigrid the Haughty, following Gunhild's death. Of course, all of the uncertainties surrounding Sweyn's wives makes it even more challenging to definitively establish Canute's maternal lineage. But, also according to the Ecomium Emae, Canute's brother Harald was younger of the two brothers. Well, this is the only real information we have in terms of their relations with each other. There is certainly a lack of concrete information about his early life. His upbringing does hint at a martial education, however, under Thorkel the Tall, chieftain of the legendary Jomsvikings on the island of Wolin off the Pomeranian coast. Despite those scant details about his childhood, a poetic verse by Ottar Svati suggests Canute's early involvement in warfare, possibly during Sweyn Forkbeard's invasion of England in 1003 to 1004, or perhaps subsequent conflicts around the same time. The ambiguity surrounding these events makes pinpointing his birth year all the more challenging, and the estimates range from 980 all the way to the year 1000. As of right now, we don't really know for sure. The Kittilinga saga provides a vivid description of Canute, portraying him as exceptionally tall, strong, and apparently quite handsome, albeit with a distinctive nose. His fair complexion, thick hair, and keen-sighted eyes added to his imposing presence, as depicted in Icelandic lore. Well, the historical narrative begins to gain some clarity with his participation in Sweyn Forkbeard's campaign to invade England in 1013. Sweyn's swift conquest of the kingdom propelled Canute into a position of authority, overseeing the fleet and army base at Gainsborough in Lincolnshire. However, Sweyn's sudden death in 1014 prompted a power struggle, with Harald assuming the Danish throne, while English nobility recalled Aethelred from Normandy. Despite Canute's claim to the English throne, opposition from the nobility forced him to retreat back to Denmark, apparently leaving behind a trail of mutilated hostages that littered the Kentish beach. His diplomatic moves with Harald for a joint kingship proved futile, prompting him to assemble a formidable fleet for yet another invasion of England. Among Denmark's allies was Boleslaw I the Brave, Duke of Poland and later crowned king, who provided Polish troops, a gesture likely made as a pledge to Canute and his brother Harald during their mission to retrieve their mother from the Wends in the winter. Their mother had actually been sent away by their father, following the marriage of the Swedish king Eric the Victorious to Sigrid the Haughty, the Swedish queen mother, forming a potent alliance between Sweden's heir Olaf Skotkonung and Denmark's rulers, which were his relatives. Swedish forces were undoubtedly among the allies in the English conquest. Another important ally was Eirikr Hakonarsson, Earl of Lade, and co-ruler of Norway with his brother Svein Håkonsson. Norway having been under Danish sovereignty since the Battle of Svolder in 999. Eirikyr's involvement in the invasion left his son Hakon to govern Norway alongside Svein. In the summer of 1015, Canute's fleet, comprising around 200 longships and an estimated army of 10,000 angry Danish men, set sail for England. Canute led a diverse array of Vikings across Scandinavia, while the invasion force primarily composed of mercenaries. Over the next 14 months, the invading army engaged in intense and very brutal warfare against Edmund Ironside, the eldest son of Aethelred. Virtually all of the battles during this period were fought against Edmund. Now, according to the Peterborough Chronicle manuscript, a significant witness to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, in early September 1015, Canute came into Sandwich. That's a place, not an actual sandwich, right? And straight away sailed around Kent to Wessex, until he came to the mouth of the Frome, and harried in Dorset and Wiltshire and Somerset, initiating a campaign of unprecedented intensity not seen since the days of Alfred the Great. There is also a passage from Queen Emma's Encomium, and it gives us an idea of what Canute's fleet was like. I'll read the full passage now. There were so many kinds of shields that you could have believed that troops of all nations were present. Gold shone on the prows. Silver also flashed on the variously shaped shifts. For who could look upon the lions of the foe, terrible with brightness of gold, who upon the men of metal, menacing with golden face, who upon the bulls of the ships threatening death, their horns shining with gold, without feeling any fear for the king of such force. Furthermore, in this great expedition, there was present no slave, no man freed from slavery, no low-born man, no man weakened by age, for all were noble, all strong with the might of mature age, all sufficiently fit for any type of fighting, all of such great fleetness that they scorned the speed of horsemen. Now, Wessex, historically ruled by the dynasty of Alfred and Ethelred, capitulated to Canute in late 1015, echoing its submission to his father 2 years earlier. Eadric Streona, the ealdorman of Mercia, deserted Ethelred, bringing 40 ships and their crews to join forces with Canute. Thorkel the Tall, a Jomsviking chief, also defected, possibly due to personal vendettas against his brother's killers, and his ties to Canute through childhood mentorship. Apparently they were old buddies. In early 1016, the Vikings crossed the Thames, plundering Warwickshire, while Edmund Ironside's efforts to resist faltered. Despite summoning the English army, opposition waned as London's king and citizens were absent. Canute's devastating midwinter advance through eastern Mercia compelled another English muster, but internal discord undermined their efforts and unity. Edmund and Uhtred, the Earl of Northumbria, raided western Mercia, potentially targeting Eadric Streona's lands. Canute's occupation of Northumbria prompted Uhtred's submission, but his subsequent assassination by a rival illustrated Canute's ruthlessness. With Eirikir Hakonarsson's reinforcement, Canute consolidated control over Northumbria. Meanwhile, Prince Edmund remained defiant in London, eventually ascending to the throne upon Aethelred's death on the 23rd of April 1016. Canute's forces meticulously executed their siege of London, employing sophisticated tactics such as constructing dikes to enclose the city's northern and southern flanks. Additionally, they managed to dig a channel across the Thames banks to the south, effectively cutting off river-based communications and completely isolating the city. Amidst the siege, battles erupted at strategic locations, including in Penselwood in Somerset and Shurston in Wiltshire. Despite the fierce fighting and the incredible amount of dying on both sides, neither one of them emerged as the clear victor in these engagements. In a daring move, King Edmund managed to temporarily relieve the pressure on London. Crossing the Thames at Brentford, he engaged the Danish forces and secured a hard-fought victory. However, the English suffered heavy losses in the process, prompting Edmund to withdraw to Wessex to gather reinforcements. Undeterred by their setback, the Danes renewed their siege of London, and despite several attempts, their assaults on the city proved to be unsuccessful. Meanwhile, the English forces, who were emboldened by their recent success, launched counterattacks and managed to push the Danes back into Kent. But the situation took a significant turn when Eadric Streona switched his allegiance to King Edmund. This defection further complicated Canut's effort to maintain control over the region, and it was not looking good. Nevertheless, undeterred, Canute remained resolute in his campaign. He sailed north across the Thames estuary to Essex, and then proceeded up the River Orwell, extending the reach of the conflict into the very heart of Mercia. On the 18th of October, 1016, the pivotal Battle of Asandun took place, marking another turning point in the conflict between the English and the Danish forces. The battle unfolded as the Danish army, led by Canute, retreated towards their ships. The engagement occurred either at Ashington or in southeast Essex, or Ashton in northwest Essex. In the midst of the fierce struggle, Eadric Streona, who had seemingly switched sides to support King Edmund, unexpectedly withdrew his forces from the battlefield, dealing a devastating blow to the English cause and sealing their fate. Following the defeat at Asandun, King Edmund fled westward, with Canute in relentless chase. The pursuit culminated in another clash, likely near the forest of Dean, where Edmund, bolstered by alliances with Welsh allies, made a brave final stand against the advancing Danish forces. Well, despite Edmund's valiant efforts, he was unable to stem the tide of Canute's advance. Eventually, the two adversaries met on an island near Deerhurst to negotiate terms of peace. The resulting agreement divided England along the Thames, with the northern territories falling under Canute's domain, and the southern regions remaining under Edmund, including the crucial city of London. Not a bad deal. Additionally, it was agreed that upon Edmund's death, Canute would ascend to the throne as ruler of the entire realm. Oh, right. Well, maybe Edmund rather selfishly agreed to it. But Edmund's reign was short-lived. He passed away on the 30th of November, mere weeks after the peace accord was reached. So before a lot of people even knew about it, well, he was already gone. Of course, There are a few eyebrows raised at the circumstances of his death. More than a few sources suggest foul play, and no wonder. But either way, with Edmund's demise, the West Saxons ultimately adopted Canute as their king, paving the way for his coronation by Archbishop Leifing of Canterbury in London in 1017. Thus, Canute's ascension marked the consolidation of Danish rule over all of England. During Canute's nearly two-decade reign over England, he implemented measures that not only established stability within the kingdom, but also extended his influence across Scandinavia. Under his rule, England enjoyed a period of relative peace, with protection against Viking raids provided by Canute's own forces, many of whom were under his direct command. This safeguarding of England's borders helped to restore the prosperity that had been threatened by Viking attacks since the 980s. Additionally, England did not face any significant external threats during Canute's reign, further contributing to its stability. And Canute wasted no time in consolidating his power and eliminating potential challengers, potentially from those and the remnants of the once mighty Wessex dynasty. In his first years as king, he executed several English noblemen whom he viewed as possible threats. Notably, he ordered the killing of Eadwig Atheling, the son of Aethelred, and Edmund Ironside's sons fled abroad to escape Canute's wrath. Furthermore, Aethelred's sons by Emma of Normandy sought refuge in Normandy. In July of 1017, Canute married Queen Emma, widow of Aethelred, and the daughter of Richard I, Duke of Normandy, solidifying his ties more to the Norman nobility. To finance his rule and maintain his army, Canute imposed a substantial Danegald tax, collecting an enormous sum of £72,000 from across the entire nation, with an additional £10,500 extracted from London alone. That goes to show you how many people were already living in London. Well, with all this revenue, Canute disbanded most of his army, retaining only 40 ships and their crews as a standing force in England. He also established an annual tax, known as herregeld, similar to Aethelred's system actually, and it was mainly to fund the military expenditure. Canute reorganized England's administrative structure by grouping multiple shires under a single earldom, creating 4 large administrative units. These units were based on the historical kingdoms preceding England's unification. He appointed earls, a title of Scandinavian origin, to oversee these provinces. Initially, Wessex remained under Canute's direct control, while Northumbria, East Anglia, and Mercia were assigned to prominent individuals. Jobs for friends, of course. However, this initial distribution of power was also short-lived. Eadric Streona, remember him? Initially granted control of Mercia, was executed within a year, so he didn't make it very far. Mercia eventually passed to Leofric, a prominent local figure. In subsequent years, other earls fell out of favor, leading to further shifts in the dynamics across England. Canut's reign also saw a transition from reliance on Scandinavian followers to the integration of Anglo-Saxon nobility into positions of power. And over time, trusted Anglo-Saxon families assumed control of earldoms previously held by Scandinavian appointees, further stabilizing Canut's rule and integrating the English and Danish elements of society. Well, that's one way to stop rebellions. Well, back in Norway, the Battle of Nesjar in 1016 was a pivotal event, marking Olaf Haraldsson's successful bid to win the Kingdom of Norway from the Danes. This significant victory occurred after Eric, an ally of Canute, departed for England. Following the death of Svein, possibly while retreating to Sweden, Eric's son Hakon joined his father in supporting Canut's cause in England, leaving Olaf with an opportunity to seize power in England. Meanwhile, Canut's brother Harald likely attended Canut's coronation in 1016, before returning to Denmark as its new king, accompanied by part of the fleet. However, there was a bit of uncertainty surrounding Harald's fate, as his name was entered alongside Canut's in confraternity with Christ Church, Canterbury in 1018. This entry, possibly made by Canute himself, may have been a symbolic gesture to ensure his brother's soul was under divine protection, especially if Harald had met a violent end, which is possible. Now, Canute after this had faced challenges on multiple fronts, including Denmark and England, which could have also been related to Harald's fate. In the same year of 1018, he confronted what he notes as pirates in a naval engagement, resulting in the destruction of 30 enemy ships. The exact location of this conflict remains a little bit of a mystery, and it leaves us to speculate whether it occurred off the shores of England or Denmark. Either way, there's 30 ships at the bottom of the sea, somewhere waiting to be discovered. In a letter addressed to England from Denmark in the following year of 1019, penned in his capacity as both King of England and Denmark, Canute addressed the need to quell dissent within Denmark and secure support for his rule in England. He reaffirmed his commitment to upholding both divine and secular law, urging his earldom to assist the bishops in maintaining order. And we've got the original letter. So why don't we read in King Canute's words? King Canute greets in friendship his archbishop and his diocesan bishops, and Earl Thurkill and all his earls, ecclesiastic and lay in England. I inform you that I will be a gracious lord, and a faithful observer of God's rights and just secular law. If anyone, ecclesiastic or layman, Dane or Englishman, is so presumptuous as to defy God's law and my royal authority or the secular laws, and he will not make amends and desist according to the direction of my bishops, then I pray and also command Earl Thurkill, if he can, to cause the evil doer to do right. And if he cannot, then it is my will that with the power of us both he shall destroy him in the land or drive him out of the land, whether he be of high or low rank. And it is my will that all the nation, ecclesiastical and lay, shall steadfastly observe Edgar's laws, which all men have chosen and sworn at Oxford. Since I did not spare my money, as long as hostility was threatening you, I, with God's help, have put an end to it. Then I was informed that greater danger was approaching us than we liked at all, and then I went myself with the men who accompanied me to Denmark, from where the greatest injury had come to us, and with God's help I have made it so that never henceforth shall hostility reach you from there, as long as you support me rightly, and as long as my life lasts. Now, I thank Almighty God for his help and his mercy, that I have settled the great dangers which were approaching us, that we need fear no danger to us from there, but we may reckon on full help and deliverance if we need of it. End of letter. Hey, he's pretty well spoken, huh? Not bad. Well, Canut's legacy as a wise and successful king is largely attributed to his diplomatic and administrative skills, as well as his efforts to consolidate power, of course, and foster stability within his realm. Now, despite the criticisms of his personal life, including multiple marriages and some treatment of several of his opponents, he's still regarded as a religious figure due to his support for the church and his strong adherence to Christian principles. Gee, that's funny. I didn't know multiple marriages were a Christian principle, but, well, I suppose I'll have to double check. Now, all the snark aside, during his reign, Canute effectively united the English and Danish kingdoms, bringing together the Saxon and Scandinavian peoples under a period of dominance across Scandinavia and the British Isles. His military campaigns abroad shifted the balance of power in favor of the English, of course, redirecting Viking aggression towards Scandinavia and solidifying English control over their territories. Canute's reinstatement of the laws of King Edgar facilitated the coexistence of Danish and the English legal systems, which created a framework for governance known as the Danelaw. His efforts to address grievances and strengthen governance included the issuance of proclamations on inheritance laws and taxation, as well as reforms to the currency to align it with the Scandinavian standards. Within his royal court, he fostered a diverse and surprisingly inclusive environment, welcoming both English and Scandinavian advisors and officials. After the death of Harald II in 1018, Canute travelled to Denmark to secure his succession to the Danish crown, facing opposition from some Danes, likely stemming from his earlier attack on the Wends of Pomerania. This expedition also served as a means for Canute to address his dominance and consolidate power within Scandinavia proper. During this campaign, a trusted Englishman named Godwin reportedly earned Canute's favor by leading a successful raid against a Wendish encampment. So, with his hold on the Danish throne established, Canute returned to England in 1020. He appointed Ulf Jarl, the husband of his sister Estrid Svensdatter, as regent of Denmark, and entrusted him with the care of his youngest son by Queen Emma, Harthacnut, whom Canute had designated as his heir The banishment of Thorkel the Tall in 1021 may have been related to Canut's earlier campaigns against the Wends, as Thorkel may have been involved in the opposition to Canut's rule, but that is a little bit of speculation. It seems the most likely reason for his exile. In response to attacks from the Norwegian king Olaf Haraldsson and the Swedish king Anond Jacob, Ulf orchestrated a ruse to gain support from Harthacnut as king of Denmark, effectively ruling as regent himself. Upon learning of these events, Canute sailed back to Denmark to confront Ulf and restore his authority. The Battle of Helgeia, fought at the mouth of the river Helgeia around 1026, resulted in a victory for Canute and solidified his dominance in Scandinavia. According to some accounts, the rift between Canute and Ulf culminated in a fatal altercation during a banquet in Roskilde. Allegedly, a dispute arose between them while playing chess, and on the following day on Christmas of 1026, one of Canute's housecarls killed Ulf in the middle of Trinity Church, and Canute gave his approval to do this. Well, after consolidating his power in Scandinavia, Canute received an invitation to witness the accession of the Holy Roman Emperor Conrad II in Rome. This invitation presented an opportunity for Canute to enhance his prestige and establish diplomatic relations with other European rulers. He left his affairs in the north, and he travelled from Denmark to Rome, arriving in time for the coronation at Easter in 1027. Canute's journey to Rome served multiple purposes. As a Christian king, he saw it as an opportunity to repent for his sins, pray for redemption, and secure the well-being of his subjects. Additionally, he aimed to negotiate with the Pope for various concessions, including a reduction in the costs of the pallium for English archbishops, and a resolution to the competition between the archdioceses of Canterbury and Hamburg-Brennen for superiority over the Danish diocese. Canute also sought to improve conditions for pilgrims and merchants traveling to Rome. During his time there in Rome, Canute engaged in diplomatic discussions with the emperor, the pope, and other princes to address the needs of his realm. He advocated for the removal of barriers and tolls along the road to Rome, ensuring that his people could make their pilgrimages and conduct trade without hindrance. His efforts were supported by the emperor, as well as by King Rudolf, who controlled many of the toll gates along the route. His influence and reputation as a just Christian king, a statesman, and a diplomat were evident during his time in Rome. His interactions with other rulers and his advocacy for the interests of his people earned him widespread praise and respect. The witness of 4 archbishops, 20 bishops, and numerous dukes and nobles attested to the importance of his negotiations and the solemn agreements reached during his visit. His commitment to justice and fairness, both at home and abroad, left a lasting impression on those he encountered and contributed to his image as a wise and capable leader. All in all, this visit to Rome solidified his status within Europe. During the imperial procession, he and the King of Burgundy stood alongside Emperor Conrad, emphasizing Canute's importance and equal footing among the European rulers. The close relationship between Canute and the emperor was clearly evident, as they were described as being like brothers due to their similar ages. In recognition of their friendship, Conrad gifted Canute lands in the Mark of Schleswig, a strategic region bridging the Scandinavian kingdoms and the continent. Thus, the successful outcome of Canute's visit to Rome was celebrated in poetry, with Sigta Thordarson praising him as dear to the emperor and close to Peter. That's the Apostle Peter. This accolade highlighted Canute's favor with both secular and religious authorities. So with the support of the Church and his newfound alliances in the south, Canute was in a stronger position to resolve the conflicts with his northern rivals upon his return home. In his letter to his countrymen, Canute expressed his intentions to secure peace and establish firm treaties with neighboring peoples who posed a threat to his rule. He attributed his success to God's intervention, seeking divine protection for his kingdom and the defeat of his enemies. Canute outlined his plans to return to Denmark to ensure its security before sailing to England to attempt the equipping of a fleet. His return to Denmark marked the beginning of efforts to stabilize his realm and once and for all enforce his authority. This intention to proceed to Denmark to secure peace among the Scandinavian kingdoms aligns with the historical accounts of his efforts to consolidate rule in the region. Reports from John of Worcester suggest that Canute heard of discontent among Norwegians in 1027 and sent them sums of gold and silver to gain their support for his claim to the throne. In the following year, 1028, Canute embarked on a campaign to Norway with a fleet of 50 ships, facing little serious opposition from King Olaf Haraldsson, whose nobles had already been thoroughly bribed. Seems to be a good strategy. Canute was crowned the King of Norway, adding to his titles of England and Denmark and part of Sweden. He entrusted the earldom of Lade to Hakon Eriksson, a member of the family with a history of hostility towards independent Norwegian kings. Hakon's role as Canute's lieutenant in strategic sea lanes and his installation as the king's deputy in Norway solidified Canute's dominance once again. However, Hakon's untimely death in a shipwreck in the winter of 1029 or perhaps early 1030 disrupted Canute's plans for Norway. Olaf Haraldsson's return, supported by the Swedes, led to his death at the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030, and Canute's attempts to rule Norway through Ælfkefu of Northampton and their eldest son Svein Knutson was marked by rebellion and heavy taxation, leading to the restoration of the former Norwegian dynasty under Magnus the Good, Saint Olaf's illegitimate son. This period became known as Ælfkefu's time in Norway. Now, turning to a more western part of the Isles, onto Ireland, where the Battle of Clontarf in 1014 marked a significant turning point, where various armies clashed before the very walls of Dublin. Mael Morda mac Mercada, the king of Leinster, and Sigtryg Silkbeard, the ruler of the Norse Gaelic kingdom of Dublin, sought assistance from the Viking kingdoms to rebel against Brian Borma, the High King of Ireland. Sigurd the Stout, the Earl of Orkney, was offered command of the Norse forces, while Brian sought assistance from the Albanic, led by Domnall mac Elmin mac Cainig, the Mormaer of Mar. I know, they're old Irish names and a little bit difficult to get the tongue around. Now, the Leinster-Norse alliance ended up getting defeated, resulting in the death of both commanders. Sigurd and Mael Morda, as well as Brian, his son, his grandson, and Mormaer Domnall. Sigtyr's alliance was broken, leading to the restoration of the High Kingship in Ireland to Mael Secnal mac Domnall. Following this Battle of Clontarf, there was a brief period of freedom for the Vikings of Dublin in the Irish Sea Zone, creating a political vacuum. And of course, Canute was going to be there. He emerged as a prominent figure posed to fill the void. As a matter of fact, it was only a stone's throw away from the kingdoms he already had. May as well gobble up a little bit more land. And given his leadership in the Scandinavian world and control over commercial arteries, well, it made even more sense. Coinage struck in Dublin bearing Canute's quatrefoil type, along with his charters mentioning the citric dukes, provide evidence of Canute's influence in the region. Canute's court poet, Sigvar Thordarson, mentions princes bringing their heads to Canute and buying peace, indicating his dominance. After consolidating his power in Norway, Canute went to Scotland with an army and navy in 1031 to receive the submission of 3 Scottish kings, being Malcolm, the future King Maelbeth, and Earmark. Malcolm, however, did not fully adhere to Canute's power, and Canute's influence over Scotland waned by the time of his death. Additionally, a lausiva by the skald Ottar Svarti greets the ruler of the Danes, Irish, English, and island dwellers, suggesting Svein Forkbeard's activities in the Irish Sea and Adam Bremen's story of his interaction with Rex Scotorum, the King of the Irish. This verse may also be relevant to Canute's relations with the Irish, particularly in light of Lemark's submission in 1031. Now, on to Canute's relationship with the Church, which was a little bit complex. Despite being a Christian before his kingship, Canute's actions as a conqueror and his marriage to Emma of Normandy, while already married to Aelfgifu of Northampton, raised more than a few eyebrows. However, he sought to repair his relationship with the Church by extensively supporting and patronizing churches and monasteries throughout England. He repaired churches and monasteries that had been plundered by Vikings, built new churches, and was a generous patron of monastic communities. His efforts to support the Church, however, were not solely political. He genuinely sought, wholeheartedly, to enhance Christianity within his realms. He supported the Christianization of Scandinavia, with his sister Estrid patronizing the construction of the first stone church in Scandinavia in Roskilde, while he allowed his skalds to praise Norse mythology in his honor, indicating some respect for pagan traditions. he also desired to establish a respectable Christian nation within Europe. And his generosity extended far beyond England, as he made ecumenical gifts to various churches and bishops across Europe. He exempted Christchurch in Canterbury from taxes, and granted it rights in the port of Sandwich, among other peoples. Privileges, rather. Sandwich. He also made significant donations to Winchester and Evesham, among other monasteries. Canut's journey to Rome in 1027 that we mentioned further exemplifies that dedication to Christianity, unwavering loyalty. While there, he made agreements from the Pope to reduce fees for English archbishops and ensure the safety of travelers from his realm to Rome. It was not only a diplomatic gesture, but also a manifestation of his religious devotion. Despite his efforts to reconcile with the Church in later times, Canute faced challenges, and his policies were not universally embraced. This burden of taxation imposed to support his ecclesiastical gifts was felt very hard by a great many people, and his relationship with certain English sees, such as London, for example, was deeply strained by this. His death in 1035 marked the beginning of a turbulent period for England and Denmark. In Denmark he was immediately succeeded by his son Harthacnut, who reigned as Cnut III. However, Harthacnut's prolonged stay in Denmark led to discontent among the English, and he was eventually abandoned by his English supporters. And this allowed his half-brother, Harold Harefoot, born to Canute and Elfgifu of Northampton, to seize power as a regent in England from 1035 to 1037. Harold later claimed the English throne in 1037 and ruled until his death in 1040. With the eventual peace in Scandinavia, Harthacnut was able to assert his claim to the throne and reunite the crowns of Denmark and England in 1040. His reign lasted until his death in 1042. However, following that, Denmark fell into a period of disorder characterized by the power struggle between Svein Estridsson, a pretender to the throne and son of Ulf, and the Norwegian king. This period of instability persisted until the death of Magnus I of Norway in 1047. Had Knut's sons survived longer, and his daughter Gunhilda not died before becoming Empress Consort, Knut's reign may have been able to lay the foundation for a complete political union between England and Scandinavia. The envisioned North Sea Empire, with ties to the Holy Roman Empire through Gunhilda's marriage, could have reshaped Europe. But it didn't, because these historical events unfolded differently, and the opportunity for such a union was not realized. But who knows? History's not over yet. It never is. Who knows if the Norwegians are going to invade England, or the people of Denmark, Denmark, are going to invade Norway, or anything could happen. Things beyond your wildest dreams. Who knows? It's anyone's guess. But what I do know is I have 3 Chads on the Patreon. That is, Jeffrey, Stock Factory, and JC. Thank you very much, boys, for supporting the channel. If you would like to do so, and get a mention at the end of the video, world famous, then you know what to do. Follow those links. But once again, I will say thank you for listening, though I'm not sure if I've said it yet. I will see you in the next video. Good night, and farewell for now.